So if there's one thing that extinct animals have a reputation for, rightly or wrongly, it's being really big. Now this doesn't apply to all groups. The biggest spider that we know of in Earth's history is still alive to this day. I will leave it up to you whether you think that's a relief or not. And let's not forget that the biggest animal to ever exist in Earth's history is also still alive today, the blue whale. But with many groups such as terrestrial mammals, arthropods, and yes, dinosaurs, the biggest numbers are far behind us. So let's take a look at what the largest animals were, how they got so big, and why things haven't been the same since. Now when it comes to the biggest groups, dinosaurs and mammals are pretty much taking the lead. And before anyone mentions pando forests or fungi, we are just talking animals in this video. But if you do want to hear more on other organisms, be sure to let me know down below. Having said that, the dinosaurs and mammals existed little, large and anything in between. Plus other groups have had good cracks at the whole being big thing, such as Varanus priscus, or more commonly referred to as Megalania, Arthropleura, Shastasaurus, Titanoboa, Deinosuchus, Quetzalcoatlus, and of course Megalodon. Now all of these animals had their own special scenarios in which they got to such gargantuan sizes, of which I will be getting into. But animals getting big normally comes down to the same thing every time, and that's energy consumption. Now getting big isn't easy, but staying big isn't exactly a walk in the park either. You need all the calories you can get, meaning there has to be enough food, duh, oxygen and heat. Why don't we take a look at heat first? Now this is a general rule of thumb with many exceptions, but it's no coincidence that certain prehistoric times are associated with high temperatures as well as big animals. Long story short, your body uses up more calories the colder it gets because it's using energy to just stay warm. Now the difference isn't huge for animals our size before you go on some freezing diet. But when you're talking huge animals like what we're talking about today that spend tens of thousands of calories just existing, that's the kind of energy expenditure that they could really do without. An example of this is the group of dinosaurs known as sauropods. Last year, June et al. Used computer models to determine that rises in temperatures at the end of the Triassic actually played a role in sauropod success, who had just started to get really big. If they had to spend their energy in just keeping warm, there wouldn't have been any calories left to grow to such sizes. Another aspect that comes into play is oxygen. The whole reason we have blood is so that oxygen can travel around our body. And if there's more body to travel around and fuel, you're going to need more oxygen. This is why we see a correlation between oxygen levels and size, with diversification events that birth large animals matching spikes in oxygen levels, such as oxygen increases due to the first photosynthesizing organisms. I'm looking at you, Cambrian. Now this can't be seen more than in arthropods. Oxygen levels were excessively high during the Carboniferous period, and it just so happens this is when we see the biggest creepy crawlies, such as Megahan and Arthropleura. And don't worry, I will have videos on Arthropleura and the Carboniferous coming out next week. Maybe subscribe so you don't miss them. But I'll explain a small portion now. Arthropods aren't all that phased on the whole lung thing. Instead, they have an air duct system, using pore-like holes around their bodies to breathe. To test oxygen effects on arthropods, a study was conducted in which 3 cockroaches were left to grow under different oxygen conditions. The one with the lowest oxygen ended up being very small. The one that grew under today's oxygen levels grew to an average cockroach size. And the one subjected to higher oxygen levels grew a lot bigger. So why is this? Well, these air ducts that arthropods use will actually change depending on the conditions of the atmosphere. If the oxygen levels are low, all of the growth energy will go into making these ducts bigger to take in as much oxygen as possible. If the oxygen is high, however, then those ducts can relax and that growth energy goes into the animal's overall size. Also, oxygen can only permeate so far into an arthropod's body through these air ducts. So the less oxygen there is, the more difficulty it's going to have going through a large body. So during the Carboniferous period, when oxygen levels were almost a third higher than what they are today, stands to reason that you'd get monsters like Arthropleura and Megahan. Another form of energy that is consumed by organisms is, you guessed it, food. Now, food in high abundance allows for an animal to have the calories to spare to fuel growth in size. Now, if the larger members of a certain species is allowed to not starve to death, it means that they can live on and pass on those big boy genes. If competition pushes herbivores to get bigger, then that's more food for the predators. With higher heat and oxygen helping out, this is how reptiles such as T-Rex and Triceratops got so huge. The best example of this, seen at several points in Earth's history, is island gigantism and island dwarfism. If an area of land is heavily isolated for long periods, the terrestrial organisms that are left to their own devices will often evolve into species unlike any other. It's no coincidence that Australia has been an isolated landmass for nearly 80 million years, and the life there is special. Terrifying. If, for example, on a particular island a species finds that its food source is somewhat lacking, then the best evolutionary step for survival is to make a body that requires less calories. Exhibit A, Homo floresiensis, also nicknamed hobbits. This is an extinct species of human that inhabited the island of Flores in Indonesia, where there simply wasn't enough food and they hadn't developed the means to get more. So it stands to reason that an island with more food for a particular species will have the opposite effect. This can be seen in particular with the giant moa birds of New Zealand, along with their predators, the Haast seagull, or the humongous Hatzegopteryx from the famous Haast Island. Insular gigantism and dwarfism is also why this picture is to scale. Now, these are the methods for getting big, but again, I have to stress that the actual reasons for any animal getting big is almost always different in each scenario. But more often than not, it comes down to competition, whether that be from members of its own species or from other animals. And this growth is always accommodated by abundance in food, oxygen, and or heat. So why the hell aren't animals as big today? Well, this question has some inaccurate implications. For a start, it's not like things simply used to be bigger and now they're not. These animals didn't all exist at the same time and actually lived alongside other animals that we might consider small. And again, remember that the biggest animal in Earth's history that we know of is still alive to this day. But it certainly can't be denied that the top predators and hyperherbivores of today's environments are on average a hell of a lot smaller than they used to be in, say, the Mesozoic. And I put this down to two reasons. Firstly, mammals have really only dominated for the last 60 million years or so. In fact, most of life on Earth has just been picking itself up since the last extinction event, which in geological terms didn't really happen that long ago. Dinosaurs, on the other hand, had around 180 million years to get to the way they were, and the mammals have only been top dogs for less than half of that. But they have gotten giant in that time. Which brings us on to the second reason, and that is that bigger isn't always better. Gigantic animals, apart from needing more calories to survive, have often grown to such sizes for highly specialised reasons. And that's the thing with specialisation. It's great when you want to be the top dog in your niche, but as soon as a change is introduced, such as change in sea levels, or deforestation, or atmospheric changes caused by, say, an asteroid impact, it's the specialists that are the first to go. Regardless, I would love to hear what your favourite prehistoric giant was down in the comments below. Also, if you did enjoy it and felt you learned something new, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, as it would really help the channel out and help it to reach more paleo nerds like you and me. Another way you could support this channel and get your hands on some awesome features and merch is by supporting on Patreon, and also checking out Dino-gen.com for art prints and much more. And I'll catch you guys next time.